Yo, what is up guys, Grim here, and in today's video we're going to be talking the new crafting meta in the Ultimatum League. So Grinding Gear has announced a ton of changes, some of which impact crafting and gearing up your character in a big way for players across the spectrum. So let's dive in and take a look at the details. So the nerfs. What are we losing? Well, Harvest is getting an absolute blasting. It's getting a hammering. So you will no longer be able to remove mods with Harvest, and you will no longer find augments of a specific type in Harvest either. However, the power is not all gone. You still can achieve a specific augment type by using the crafting bench and using 2 to 4 exalts. You can get a similar effect to the augment. So still powerful, you can still get a targeted modifier you want, but it is no longer as accessible and you will no longer be able to remove mods. Next up, Bestiary splitting has been limited. You can no longer split that 6 white, 6 linked Viral Regalia infinitely, and the accessibility of mid power level items will be wiped out completely. If you're used to buying something like an elemental hit bow or a specter chest for cheap from some of these massive crafting empires who mass produce these items using splitting tactics, this will no longer be the case. With the removal of this mechanic, you will no longer see these massive, kind of bow or specter chest manufacturers going brr. You will no longer be able to get these items for cheap, and perfect items will also be much rarer. Benchcrafts have also been nerfed. Grinding Gear have gone for the triple tap on crafting. Benchcrafts, we don't know how bad the nerf will be, but this is definitely going to hurt players on the lower end of things. Stuff like multi-modding an item will be weaker, and also filling in stuff like resists or, getting attack speed on your bow or something like that will be less powerful. So overall, a nerf to power and crafting across the board. It's going to make high-end items much harder to make. It's going to get mid-tier items far more expensive and less accessible, and it's also going to hurt the lower tier items because you're no longer going to be able to bump them up with those powerful bench crafts as well. Alright, a massive hit across the board. What is the good news? Well, let's get into the new content that we can look at and look forward to in the new patch. So, Availed item reworked. This is flying under the radar a little bit. I think it's one of the most powerful changes Grinding Gear has made in a long time and has potential to be on, a Harvest kind of level of power when used correctly. So, veiled items traditionally are kind of just like crafting recipe fodder. Most people pick them up en masse, identify them all on June, and dump them in a vendor tab and just get rid of them. So that is no longer how they are kind of intended to be used. They are now seen as super items. Items which you can pick up and you can identify a tier 1 modifier on. So veiled modifiers, the kind of inscribed line, when you take that to June now, you'll have an option to add one of 3 tier 1 equivalent modifiers to your item. So that's pretty powerful. Let's say you pick up a bow and it has high physical and high attack speed, and then you unveil it, and then you unveil a % physical modifier or something like that. That is now a very powerful bow. Very, very good indeed. Essentially, it's a pick one of 3 tier 1 modifiers. Of course, that is random which 3 that you're going to get presented, but it does give you the option to make it an incredibly powerful item. Now, this is, of course, is not very powerful by itself. Veiled items can be on any base, they can have any modifiers, and you can only do it once. And who knows how good that's going to be. Well, enter the Availed Chaos Orb, a brand new currency being added to the game in 3.14. So this item reforges an item with, of course, a new veiled modifier. This essentially allows you to pick the base, you could quality up to 30% or whatever else you want to do on it, and then you can add random mods and also a veiled modifier on that item. So essentially achieving the veiled effect of a T1 modifier, or pick one of 3, on the base you want. So that's pretty good. Definitely on par or more powerful than an Exalted Orb, with the downside is that it scrambles your item. The fact that it's a Chaos Orb is a shame. Imagine if it was a Veiled Exalted Orb. My goodness. Very, very good that would be. But, no, we can counter the fact that it's a Chaos Orb. So, let's paint a few scenarios so that you guys can kind of understand the power of the Availed Chaos Orb. So of course, it adds a T1 modifier, very, very good. I will also like to point out that there's Veiled modifiers that are not in the traditional mod pool that will also be bumped up to a new T1 level, I imagine. Stuff like double damage will get a massive boost, you know, stuff like Fizz's extra chaos and stuff like that. You know, all sorts of really interesting stuff that we could see at new power levels, essentially raising the bar for the best items in the game. Most of the most powerful items, like mirror tier items and stuff like that, I imagine they'll have a veiled modifier on them. That would be my best guess. So super duper powerful. Anyway, how can we use this thing? Well, this has pretty good synergy with fractured items. So if you fracture one modifier you want on the item, and then you get another Veiled Chaos Orb and you slam it on, and then you get a Veiled modifier in that item, well, that's pretty damn good, because now you have two tier 1 modifiers on it, and you have a pretty good chance of getting a modifier you want, because you have to pick from 3. And if you don't, because it's a fractured item, you just use another Veiled Chaos Orb on it until you get the modifier you want on it, whether that be double damage, tier 1 physical, anything like that. You can get access to it, so pretty damn good. And you can kind of keep going. And then, you know, you got a 2 mod item, maybe you lock the prefixes and suffixes, and then slam on a harvest craft. That's a 3 mod item, multi-mod, 2 more mods, boom, there you go, there's your item. Very, very powerful indeed, and it could be super duper strong. Okay, so that's one scenario. You can also do the harvest approach where you lock an item's prefixes or suffixes. So let's say you have an item with 3 awesome prefixes, and then you go lock prefixes, Veiled Chaos Orb slam, boom. You know, you can then put a veiled suffix on there, which is going to be, you know, a T1 modifier, and that could start to round out your item. Very, very strong indeed. So there's super duper cool things you can do with the Availed Chaos Orb. The fact that it always gives you a tier 1 equivalent modifier is still to be seen. That's just what Chris Wilson is saying. But you know, it could be pretty awesome. Very, very excited to try it. And it's definitely something that could be a new avenue to crafting the best items in the game. All right, that's not all we're getting though. We're getting new Bestiary crafts. One of the most important things is the accessibility of Bestiary. It's on the Atlas. It's mass farmable, and you know, there's tons of people always doing it. And some of the crafts that they've quoted are incredibly strong. One of them is an augment influence. They've said that it augments a new influence modifier. This was one of the most in-demand and powerful crafts of the Harvest League. It has been moved over all the way into Bestiary of all places. So it's going to be more accessible and it's going to be tradable. So you essentially can augment influence tons and tons of times, and it's going to be very, very powerful indeed. So, you know, that's a massive power spike to Bestiary, and it's some of the most powerful features from Harvest at our disposal from Bestiary. So very, very nice there. You know, you can do all sorts of stuff with augment influence. So big Bestiary buffs, and that may just be the tip of the iceberg. We don't know what else Bestiary is getting. Very exciting indeed. Also, we're getting essence upgrades. So, essences traditionally are some of the most powerful item-based starters. You know, if you're crafting crit rings, you always start with a crit multi-essence. You know, if you're crafting dexterity stacking gear, or, you know, in-stacking gear, essences are the go-to place because you can get a tier 0 modifier. And they're saying that they're going to further buff essences. At one time, essences offered complete dominant mods over all other mods. Like, you know, they offered the T0 mods to players, but then they had to nerf them because they were so damn powerful. And now they're saying they're going to restore them to their former glory. So using essences is going to guarantee you a T1 or a T0 mod. That's crazy. So when you combine the ability to augment items potentially from Bestiary, you know, you get augment influence or something like that, you have T0 potential mods from essences, and then you have the ability to almost guarantee a veiled mod with a veiled Chaos Orb through the kind of slamming of that. You know, we have a ton of new options available to us to kind of craft these new items, and none of them are overly kind of crazy and difficult to farm. You know, and none of them are kind of obscure. They're all kind of accessible to everybody. You can trade them. You don't need to go on a weird Discord server. And you know, it's very, very exciting that we're getting a ton of new options. You know, we're also getting new base types, all sorts of very, very cool stuff indeed. So while we're losing stuff, we're also getting a ton of stuff in return. We're also seeing massive buffs to Abystrals just randomly. So overall, what does the landscape look like? Well, we're losing a ton of flexibility and power in the form of base splitting and Harvest. But a lot of that power is actually being moved over to these new systems and also taken to new heights with stuff like the Veiled mod and Essence buffs, with potential for even better items and new ways to craft them, which don't include a Discord server. So while Harvest, rest in peace, still will be used for a great number of things and it's incredibly powerful, we are seeing really, really awesome new crafting methods popping up potentially as well. Hopefully they get the numbers right on those and they're as exciting as they're telling us they are indeed. So very, very good. Much prefer the new system. Personally, I really am excited about those Bestiary changes and we'll just see how it has to shake out. Tons more videos coming. Get hyped for Ultimatum. I'll see you guys in the next one. Cheers.